Coming to you with the last section of our cardiovascular notes that we did not get to finish in class because of these unusual coronavirus circumstances. So I'm just going to record. I've dumped everything into Google Slides here, and I'm going to kind of go work my way through these so that you have everything to test. Okay, there are 6 different sort of classes of cardiovascular diseases that I want to work through here, and I've kind of broken them down and take everything from your notes from my smartboard that I normally use and kind of dumped them into Google Slides here. So we'll work our way through these. The first one here is atherosclerosis, and not Arthur like arthritis, but atherosclerosis. So maybe practice saying that a couple times. This is an accumulation of soft masses or fatty materials, often from too much cholesterol, okay, in your arteries. So normally your artery is nice and open. The blood is swooshing through there. If you have high cholesterol, sometimes those can start to build up there and form what we call a plaque, okay, P-L-A-Q-U-E, a plaque. And obviously that interferes with blood flow. Now you have less space here than here for the blood to move through. And eventually these things can actually block the flow of blood. A clot that happens is called a thrombus. And this can happen with platelets when they clot when they're not supposed to. It can also happen when you have plaque buildup and it completely shuts down or closes off that artery. If the clot dislodges and starts to roll, move through the blood, and we call that a embolism. And that becomes dangerous because then these two together, when that thing is carried through, rolls through the blood and gets stuck somewhere else, like in your lungs or your brain, it becomes what we call a thromboembolism. Thromboembolism. You might hear the words like cardiac or pulmonary, something like that, attached to that, to coronary, to show that where that clot got stuck. Pulmonary obviously would mean the lungs, cardiac or coronary in the vessels that feed the heart, you could also move up towards the brain, a lot of times, sometimes in the legs. And so these can be very dangerous because we'll talk about them here in a little bit. When it blocks the flow of blood, tissues can start dying. Number 2 is heart valve disease, where the valves in your heart, the bicuspid, tricuspid, and the semilunar valves do not work properly. Oftentimes these are birth defects, or later in life, just they degenerate or kind of wear down with age. Remember, you need the valves between the chambers of your heart and the pulmonary trunk and the aorta that are leaving your heart so that there is no backflow of blood. Okay, if your valves don't work right, then the blood, when your one ventricle goes squish right or left, the blood can go back up into the atria where we don't want it to go. If the semilunar valves, then it could go back into the pulmonary trunk or aorta, and it could flow back and down into the ventricle, and that's not good. We can fix that by using an artificial valve. I had one student a while ago that had metal valves. I wanted to be real quiet when we were taking a test. You'd hear tick, 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 tick. You could hear this thing clicking. You could hear the valves clicking in his heart. Or sometimes we may even get the valves from a pig heart, because they're very similar to ours. Some terms you might see with that is stenosis or regurgitation. Stenosis is where the valves do not open up all the way, so you're not getting enough blood through here. It's like they're closed off, and it's going to make your heart not function as well, not get as much blood pumped through. Regurgitation is when the valves do not close properly, and some blood, you get kind of a backflow of blood into that. So you may see a stenosis or regurgitation if you know someone or ever have heart valve problems yourself. Number 3 is stroke. Stroke occurs when an arteriole in the brain bursts or is blocked by an embolus. That's what we just talked about. Okay, now you can see different areas or the two different types here. Okay, the ischemic stroke over here is caused by the embolus. Remember we talked about a clot. Okay, so there's a blood clot in there and it's cutting off the supply of blood to this area in the brain. Whereas a hemorrhagic stroke is where one kind of blows open and blood is kind of leaking out into the brain. We don't want that as well. Okay, so you can have it by either a blood vessel being blocked or kind of bursting open. And what happens when you can't get blood to the brain? No oxygen causes part of the brain to die. And it depends on where that area is, if it's on the right side, left side of the brain, because remember they cross to the different halves of your body. Half of your brain controls more of your speech than the other half. So it depends where that is. You often will see someone kind of one side of their face will droop, or they'll have trouble with their left arm, left leg, or right arm, right leg. It's kind of varies by side, depending on which side of the brain the stroke happened in. Number 4, many of you have probably heard about a heart attack. You hear about someone having a heart attack. What happens is these coronary arteries that feed the heart, if they become blocked, if they become blocked with plaque buildup, then the area so if the block is happening here, then this area of heart muscle can no longer get oxygen and nutrients. And this will cause severe chest pain called angina. Angina pectoris. Make sure I spell it right here. Angina pectoris is usually, and often the pain will radiate out through the arm. If any of you watch Dumb and Dumber, when the guy that's trying to follow them kind of has a heart attack because they would put all that hot sauce in his hamburger, and he starts to have a heart attack. And then he tells him to get his nitroglycerin pills. They're these little white pills that they use. They take, and that helps dilate, helps open up the vessels and get more blood to the heart and maybe get past that blockage. But instead they give him the rat poison pills, and it ends up killing them, and then they quick run off. Okay, so you may have seen this reference to nitroglycerin pills before. When a coronary artery is completely blocked, a portion of the heart muscle dies. The actual scientific name for a heart attack is called a myocardial infarction. Number 5 is what we call an aneurysm. This is where your blood vessel kind of gets weak along the walls. One of the walls will get weak and it kind of balloons out. Sometimes we see this on tire inner tubes or that kind of thing, which can lead it to actually popping. Occurs most often in the abdominal aorta or arteries leading to the brain. Okay, so your image is down here. You can actually have an abdominal aortic aneurysm kind of above or below your kidneys. And you can see here how it's kind of ballooning out. Here's the one to the brain. Again, we talked about aneurysms. This would be a hemorrhagic aneurysm, where you get this little thing, weakness in the vessel that could pop. On other places in the aortic arch here, right above the heart. And if these, these blow, can often comes from hypertension. Please know that hypertension, you may have to write that in your notes, is chronic high blood pressure. So when your blood is constantly under higher pressure, or you have atherosclerosis, and so that makes your blood pressure higher, this can increase the risk of one of those arteries kind of for exploding. It's very dangerous. A lot of times when people drop over dead, it's not from a heart attack. It's oftentimes because of an aortic or abdominal aneurysm. Because listen, if that thing blows, it's coming right off your heart. You lose a lot of blood. They can fix that. They can put kind of temporary things, compressions around that mesh to kind of keep that together. There's screening. I did a healthy screening thing a while ago where they take an ultrasound and kind of go along your chest, and they follow your aorta, and they can measure the thickness of the walls to make sure they're not getting thin where they might kind of balloon out. So there are different tests and stuff if that runs in your family, or as you get older, things that you want, part of healthy checkup screenings that they will do to kind of monitor that. And finally, number 6 are some different treatments, some different procedures or surgeries that you might hear about when it comes to heart disease. One is a coronary bypass. Sometimes you'll hear, Grandpa had a double bypass, triple bypass, quadruple bypass. What that is if there's a blockage on the coronary arteries, they just take good vessels, sometimes from the arm or leg, and they just reroute the blood around the blockage. So like here you can see they hook it into one of the subclavian arteries here, brachial arteries that's going out towards the arm or head or neck, and they just bring it down and attach it down here to the heart. So if the blockage is back here, they just bypass, just go around it. And the single, double, triple, quadruple is just how many different blockages they are rerouting around. If there are blockages, some other things you might hear about is what we call an angioplasty. Okay, an angioplasty is the balloon thing. I think you talk about this in health some, where they will thread a catheter into the brachial artery or into the femoral artery in the groin, and they just thread it all the way up to the heart, into the coronary arteries, and they find where you have sort of a blockage, and then they insert this catheter with a little balloon thing, and then they just expand it, kind of blow it open, and kind of force open that blockage. Doesn't really get rid of it, but it just kind of opens it up a little bit, so now that the blood can flow through there again. Another thing, if it's really bad or it keeps kind of closing, they can put in what we call a stent. A stent's just a metal mesh that they put in there and then expand it. And if you look on Google Images, you can find actual images of an artery. I didn't want to gross some of you out that are a little sensitive, but this little mesh will kind of open up and help keep open that coronary artery so that we don't have myocardial infarctions or heart attacks that are happening. And finally, some things just prevention-wise would be tissue plasminogen activator, TPA. There's different medications and stuff out there that we can use to dissolve blood clots. You hear of, or you might see on the shelves, low-dose aspirin. Low-dose aspirin has been used for years. You see here it even says low dose, not enough that it's like the amounts you'd use if you had pain of some kind. But people will take a daily low-dose aspirin to help thin their blood to prevent clots from happening. If the heart has a really bad heart attack, then you may need a heart transplant, which can be hard if you know of anyone that's been on a transplant list. Sometimes that can take a while. They also have these total artificial hearts that you see over here that are just machines that they can put in there, and they will kind of circulate the blood for the person. There's been some research into using pig hearts and actually genetically modifying a pig with your own cell surface markers and growing that pig to provide a person a heart that their immune system will not attack and have better success rate for heart transplants. So it's not kind of some cool things that they're working on. So that's pretty much it for the cardiovascular notes. If you have any questions, please email me or review the video here again. Thanks.